Well, hello, everyone. On behalf of Elephant Artists Relief Society, also known as EAR, and the EAR leadership team, I'd like to officially welcome you all to tonight's Umbrella Talk. My name is Kaylee Hall, an EAR board member and head of EAR's programming committee. For tonight's Umbrella Talk, we welcome Liz Wong from Momentum to speak about personal finances for artists. But first, I'd like to begin tonight's event in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth by honoring and acknowledging Mohkinstsis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, Pikanai, as well as the Ayaksi Nakota and Tsuut'ina nations. EAR acknowledges that this territory is also cherished by the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We celebrate all nations, Indigenous and non, who honor this land. We are grateful to engage in the honest and eager process of reconciliation. We are all treaty people. So tonight's event is part of EAR's ongoing series called Umbrella Talks, which offer presentations for artists of all disciplines. This year, EAR's Umbrella Talks are supported by the Rosa Foundation. But first, a little bit about EAR. EAR is a registered charity that provides practical resources to all artists of all disciplines in Calgary and surrounding areas to help sustain their well-being and livelihood. This year, EAR celebrates 17 years of service to the arts community. EAR provides emergency financial relief funding to artists who are experiencing a medical or financial crisis, professional development workshops such as this one, a twice-monthly online artist meetup group on Facebook called Studio E, a wide variety of community resource information on Facebook and our website, and access to group health insurance benefits. As a charitable organization, we rely on grants, but also largely on donors, memberships, and fundraising to do much of what we do. You can help us by raising awareness about EAR, and if you can, consider becoming a member or donating online. 100% of every donation is allocated to providing emergency relief for artists in times of need. Another way you can support EAR is by purchasing a yearly EAR membership. Memberships support our administrative programming, like the event you're watching right now. So here's just a couple of last bits of housekeeping. Throughout the presentation, we ask that you keep your mics on mute and your video off, so there's minimal background interference. Please feel free to ask questions using the chat function by writing your questions as they come up, and we will answer them after the presentation during the Q&A portion of the evening. There will be a 5-minute break this evening. Then we will go straight from the presentation to the Q&A. When we get there, we will drop a link in the chat to a feedback form for you to fill out. We really appreciate any time you can devote to filling out the questionnaire, because your feedback means a lot to us. Also, I'd like to mention that you will be given a link in the chat to an online workbook from Momentum, and we would ask you to fill out their registration form when it's posted. So that is the registration form to fill out. And at the break, you will also be given a survey by Momentum. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Liz Wong.
Thanks so much, Kaylee, and thanks so much to everyone for joining us tonight. As Kaylee mentioned, I just posted the link to our registration form in the chat. Please take a minute to fill out our registration form. Not only does your registration help to keep workshops like this workshop tonight on budgeting funded and keep them free for everyone to enjoy, but also if you're seeking a certificate of completion after completing 5 of our core workshops, this registration is going to tell us that you attended tonight's budgeting workshop. And so that certificate of completion people have used in the past for everything from applications for rental apartments to referencing on their resume if you're going to apply for a job in financial services to everything in between. Like if you receive financial support, sometimes your caseworker will ask for it. So that's the registration form in the chat. And also there is a workbook there as well for you to download at your leisure if you'd like. As Kaylee mentioned, my name's Liz. I'm a financial empowerment facilitator here at Momentum. Momentum is a not-for-profit here in Calgary. I'm just going to share my screen now. So this is our website, momentum.org. And Momentum works primarily with people living on low incomes and also partners in our community to create a thriving local economy for everyone. And how we do that is by offering free education in three main areas, pardon me. We can teach you how to start your own business. We can teach you how to train for a good job in the trades or in IT. Or we can teach you how to manage your money, which is this green square here and why we're here today to talk about budgets. So tonight's workshop is going to be a quick and condensed version, but if you're interested in learning more about budget or any of our core topics on credit, banking, assets, consumerism, you're welcome to join our free money management workshops. We hold them online Monday nights, Tuesday afternoons at our office, and throughout the community, or you can just ask Ear to bring us back for a different topic at a later date. And you can also access all of our workshops on demand via pre-recorded video at courses.momentum.org. So in addition to these money management workshops, we also offer what we call match savings programs. So what happens is, in addition to learning about these topics, you're also committing to save a certain amount in your own bank account. Not our bank account, because we're not a bank, but if you can commit to saving, let's say $50 in your own bank account, you show your facilitator every month your bank statement, I've saved this much. At the end of the program, we will match your savings on a 3-to-1 basis. So you save 50, we'll give you 150. That's how that works. Yeah, and many other money management programs on momentum.org. So I encourage you to check that out. But yeah, so without further ado, let us get to our presentation on budgeting. I will let you know that interaction is absolutely encouraged. That being said, feel free to participate as much or as little as you would like. We're going to respect everyone's opinion today. Everyone comes from different backgrounds and has had different experiences in their life. So let's respect everyone's opinion. And also, let's keep everything that we talk about today confidential. Some people may be sharing some personal stories, so we're just going to keep that right here in this virtual classroom, so to speak. All right, so budgeting. To get us first in the mood to talk about budgeting, I would like to know, if you go outside after this workshop and you look down on the sidewalk, let's pretend that you see a $100 bill. Okay, you look around, doesn't belong to anyone, it's yours. What are you going to spend that $100 on? We'd love to know. Please share in the chat or shout it out. What would you spend $100 on if you just found it on the sidewalk just right now? I'm just gonna quickly look at the chat. Bills, yep, that's a good one. Definitely on my mind. Anyone else? Credit card bill, okay, another bill answer. Food, groceries, yep. Art supplies, that's what I was expecting. Okay, yeah. Do we have any artists in here? Could that be why? Art supplies, yeah, of course. Okay, so the next question is, who, food, art supplies, yep. Who before they even left the house today, or when you woke up this morning, did you already have a plan for what you would do with money if Liz came to this workshop and said, hey, I'm going to give you $100? Did you already have a plan for that money? Please let me know in the chat or unmute yourself for a second. I'm curious to know, did you have a plan if you found $100? Okay, maybe not so much. And very, very common answer that people don't have a plan. So why we talk about this at the beginning of this workshop is because budgeting is all about having a spending plan for your money, so that at the beginning of the month, you know where your money is going instead of getting to the end of the month and wondering where your money went. Okay, people are saying, no, not exactly huge bills this month. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, not to feel bad or anything, I was just kind of curious to know But let us continue on. Okay, so what we will cover today is our current relationship with money, how our needs, wants, and spending habits can affect our budget, categories that make up a budget, methods to track expenses, spend less money, and build our savings. And then we'll, of course, get to the meat and potatoes. We're going to build a simple budget based on your income and expenses. If we have time today, otherwise I will just show you quickly the template that we've included in the workbook that is in the chat. So we'll start on page 1 of the workbook. How do people feel about money? When I say money, what kind of emotions and thoughts come to mind? Feel free to type them in the chat or just say them out loud. It's important to know that people's childhood experiences, things that have happened to them throughout their life, and even your cultural background will affect how you feel about money. Let's see if there's anything in the chat so far. Okay, so people are saying fear, desire, need, scarcity, frugality. Yeah. And so sometimes when people feel these words about money, right? Fear, scarcity, it can cause them to feel a little negatively. Guilt I'm seeing in the chat. And why that's important to know is because how you think about money is then going to affect how you feel about money, which then impacts what you do about money, which then further reinforces what you think about money. So the classic example is if you think that money is always scarce and you may feel fearful about money, what do? You may not learn how to manage that money, right? And then when you don't manage it, then things get worse and then it reinforces how you think, right? So if I think, well, I have an income that is so low, my bills are so high this month, I can't possibly save anything. I will feel hopeless. And then what do? I don't save any money and I don't budget. And then because I didn't save and I didn't budget, well, now I have, you know, perhaps some money issues at the end of the month. And then that reinforces my thinking that, okay, well, obviously I'm living on too low of an income to be able to budget or save. Whereas let's look at the flip side. If you think positively, such as, you know, I'm living on a lower income, but perhaps I could afford to save $5 a month. You might feel a bit more hopeful. And then what do? You do set aside $5 in a month, and that $5 adds up and adds up and adds up. And, you know, in a year you have $60, which is better than nothing. And then you think to yourself, okay, you know what? Maybe I can do this. Maybe I'll up it to like $10 a month, 15, whatever. So that's the think, feel, do wheel. Yeah, and so in the workbook, it says on the next page, sorry, page 2, write down your last 8 purchases. But we're just going to think about some of our latest purchases. So maybe just type them in the chat or shout them out if you'd like. What were the last things that you spent money on? Maybe it was rent, groceries, or fuel for your car. What did I spend money on? I could probably look at my tracker. Legal fees, I think, and groceries, right? Okay, I'm seeing some stuff come in chat, gas, snacks. Gotta have snacks, right? Kids, clothing, groceries, parking. Okay, great. Okay, so I think this is a good time to talk about needs and wants, and we'll come back to what people purchased in just a few minutes here. So needs are obviously your must-haves, essential for day-to-day living. This could be food, shelter, clothing. Wants are obviously a more nice to have than need to have. And that could be like going to a movie or dining out or designer jeans. Well, hold on a second. Didn't I say that clothing was a need, but designer jeans are a want? Designer jeans are clothing, aren't they? Okay, so here's where it gets a little interesting. Needs and wants are both in a budget, right? You want them to both be in there because you don't want to feel deprived. So you're going to have some wants, right? And they are different for everyone. So going back to the designer jeans, for me, designer jeans might be a want. But if you work at a designer clothing store, and they make all their employees wear their clothing, maybe you need to have designer jeans for your job. But then how many do you need, right? Well, if you're working full time, probably at least two, just to wear one while one's in the wash. But then once you get to 3, 4, 5 pairs of designer jeans, maybe that need is becoming a want. So quantity can change that. What your needs and wants are change over time, right? My needs and wants were different when I was single and a student to when, now I'm a mom. So my needs and wants are different. And I'm sure that my needs and wants are very different from a senior's. So your needs and wants do change over time. Oops. Let's just quickly check the chat. Health-related expenses people spent on groceries, bills, yarn. Oh, okay, yarn. That sounds pretty fun. Okay, so in this diagram, and this is also on page 3, it's just showing how you could meet your need for entertainment in a variety of ways, right? So on the left-hand side, the low end of this range, if you're going to go really, really cheap, you could go to the park or the library. It's free, you're going to spend $0. Now on the far right, let's say we're gonna splurge. Maybe we'll go to Banff, have a weekend getaway, $500, right? So one costs $0 and one costs $500, but they both satisfy that need or that want for entertainment. So there are different ways of getting what you need in your want and what you want at different price points. That's just what we're trying to illustrate here. Okay, and it's also important to know that advertising's job is to turn our wants into perceived needs, right? So everyone has this product or service. You need to have it too. You deserve to have it. That's advertising's whole job. If you're curious to know more about how that works, we have an excellent workshop on consumerism. Again, you can sign up for those workshops on momentum.org, or you can do them on demand at courses.momentum.org. Okay, so let's go back to what people said their purchases were and see if their needs or wants. Gas. Do we think gas is a need or a want? Probably a need, right? Snacks? Could be a want, right? Because it's not really like your full meal that sustains you. Kids' clothing, probably a need. Groceries, pardon me, probably a need. Parking, I suppose it depends, right? For some people, they need to drive to work or what have you, and then they need to park there. Other people might say, well, I live near the train. I probably could have taken the train or walked or taken my bike, and maybe it would have been less. Health-related expenses are a need, groceries need, bills need. Yarn, I mean, an artist's needs are probably different from someone who works in an office, right? So for me, a yarn might be a want, but if yarn is really your medium, maybe that's a need. So that's why needs and wants are different for everyone. Okay, so now we are going to talk about budget busters. So we are on page 4. So sometimes when we make really smaller purchases on a regular basis, we don't really think about how they can add up, but small amounts do add up, right? So that's $7 cup of coffee. Someone corrected me this morning because I said it was $5 and they're like, no, Starbucks is $7 now. So that $7 cup of coffee every morning or every week, those snacks, over time, small purchases plus time become what we call budget busters. And they can really surprise you with the amount that they eat up. So we'd love to know, just type in the chat or shout it out loud, what are your budget busters? I'll give you an example. So a friend of mine buys my daughter toys all the time, which is fine, But she only spends, $2 to $5 at a time. So she just bought all these little Mr. Potato Heads and said, oh, these are only $2. But she bought 5 of them, so that's $10. And she does this every week. She sees my daughter every week. So $10 every week over the course of a year, 52 weeks. That's $520. $520. I've probably spent maybe 150 on toys for my daughter this year. She's spending 520. So that would be an example of a budget buster. Billy Ray Busby says bubble tea, sushi for supper, wasted veggies. I'm so bad for that too, right? Like the liquefied lettuce at the back of the fridge, streaming services like Netflix, etc. Yeah, so little purchases over time become these budget busters. So we won't do this activity, but maybe you want to look at page 4 of the workbook later on your own and just see how much your budget busters cost you. And the point of this exercise is not to make you feel guilty or bad in any way. It's really just to make you more aware of where your money's going. And if you don't like what you see, then maybe consider making some changes. Either cutting down, putting a limit, lots of different ways that you can do this. The odd lotto ticket, yeah, that's what someone said in this morning's class as well, right? Not all the time, they said, but when the jackpot's really high, like 70 million, she couldn't resist. Okay, well, at least you're aware. At least you're aware. And if that's your recreation and your entertainment, then maybe you want to make room for it in your budget. So it's up to you to decide how much you spend on your wants. All right, let's move on to what is a budget. So we're on page 5 now. In its simplest form, a budget is income on one side and expenses on the other, and you want it to balance. What does balance mean? It means your income is exactly going to equal your expenses. Hold on a second. Now, a lot of people say, well, don't I want my income to be more than my expenses? Technically, yes. But actually, what you're also going to include on the expenses side is savings and debt repayment. So if you find that you have extra dollars on the expenses side of things, if the income is greater than that, may I suggest putting that money into savings or debt repayment, or both. You can think of the budget as a company where you are the boss, and every dollar that is in the income side is your employee. Now, let me ask you, do you want a company where a bunch of employees are just sitting around with nothing to do? They don't know what their job is? No, right? So that's why you really need to tell them on the expenses side, okay, you will go towards groceries. You will go towards car payment. You don't really have a job yet. Okay, you will go into savings. So that's budgeting in a nutshell. So it's a plan for your money, as we said at the beginning, so that you can get all of your needs and some of your wants met. And this is going to help you to feel less stressed, more in control. Again, at the beginning of the month, you know where all the money is going to go, and that will help you to focus on achieving your goals and getting the things that are important to you. All right. So pardon me, a budget is not a diet for your money. It's actually about saying yes to as much as possible without overspending. So, okay, even though we know now that budgeting helps you feel less stressed, focus on your goals, it includes your needs and helps you get some of your wants. Some people choose not to budget. Why do you think that some people choose not to budget? Type it in the chat or shout it out loud if you'd like. So I'll tell you some of the examples that people gave in this morning's workshop. Okay, fear, absolutely too difficult. Yep, stress. Maybe they feel stressed about starting. Yeah, so there can be a lot of feelings involved, which is why we were kind of talking about at the beginning, well, how do you feel about money? How do you think about budget? Because that can then reinforce what you do, right? People who feel fear, people who think that budgeting is too difficult, people who are stressed about money tend to not budget. And then because they don't budget, at the end of the month, they don't know where their money went, and it can perpetuate the cycle. Oh, thanks, Marianne. Appreciate that. Okay, so when you budget, you have a plan for your money, you feel less stressed and more in control. and you can focus on the goals and things that are important to you. Okay, so let's talk more about the income side. Oh, we are breezing right along. So when people think of income, usually the first thing that comes to mind is their job, right? But if you don't have a job, or if the job is not enough income, how can you increase your income? What are some ideas? You could get a side hustle, right? Oh, I see stuff in the chat. Borrow, yeah. You can invest. How about government benefits, right? That's one way that you can get money. And especially relevant right now because now is what season? It's tax season. So when you file your taxes, that's actually like putting your hand up and saying, hello, government, I want to be considered for government benefits, because they will always ask you, did you file your taxes? Are they up to date? So important that you file your taxes. 211 is Alberta's directory for all community resources. You can find a free tax filing clinic through 211, or you can come to Momentum. Momentum actually has started its own free tax filing clinics this year. So yeah, we do have a couple of those happening in April. So different ways to increase your income. You could find money on the street, hopefully. And also, as mentioned before, Momentum has match savings programs. So if you're interested, Momentum will match your savings on a 3-to-1 basis. So that's also a way that you could kind of get a good boost for your savings. Okay, so and then these links, 211 we mentioned, canadabenefits.gc.ca, pardon me, can I start again? Canadabenefits.gc.ca is a page on the Government of Canada website where you can just type in your situation, what province you live in, and it will show you what benefits you might be eligible for. All right, so now we're going to talk about the other side of the budget, the expenses. So there's three main types of expenses. Monthly fixed, these are expenses that happen every month, and they're typically the same amount every single month. So we are on page 7 for anyone who's following along in the workbook. So that could be rent, insurance, your transit pass. I mean, yeah, the transit pass tends to go up in price every year or so, but in general, it stays about the same month to month. So monthly variable, again, happens every month, this type of expenses, but they're usually a different amount every month. So fuel for your car, utilities, your grocery bill, right? Happens every month. And then there's irregular. So irregular don't happen every month, and they tend to be different amounts each time. Or maybe sometimes they're not. But anyway, so they don't happen every month. And for that reason, sometimes they get forgotten when people budget. So it's important to write a note for yourself, or a reminder, or plan ahead so that you remember these irregular expenses, pardon me, in your budget. And these could include school fees, birthday presents, things like that. So where do we think we have the most control over? Where can we potentially decrease our expenses? What type here? Monthly fixed, monthly variable, or irregular? Oops, went ahead too much. Yeah, irregular, you could. It's actually monthly variable though that people typically have the most control over. So those grocery bills, your utilities, that's where people start to think, well, is there something I could do to save money here? So people typically think of a monthly variable. So yeah, there is an activity at the bottom of page 7. We'll just pick a few randomly to talk about. So clothing, what kind of expense do we think that is? And there could be more than one answer. Is that monthly variable, monthly fixed, or irregular? Irregular, irregular, yeah. See a bunch of people saying irregular. Could also be monthly variable. Again, depending on your spending habits and your life stage and what you consider, like a want and a need. Like my daughter probably needs a new winter jacket even before. Is winter ending now? Anyway, before the end of this year for sure. Whereas when I was just on my own, I could buy a winter jacket and I could wear it for the next 10 years. Okay, what about cell phone bill? What type of expense do we think the cell phone bill is? Monthly fixed, monthly variable, or irregular? People are saying variable, people are saying fixed, monthly variable. Yeah, could even be irregular. It really just depends on what kind of a plan you have, right? If you're on, like $80 a month, this is what you get. You stick to it, probably monthly fixed. If you're not really good at sticking to that, it could become a monthly variable. Or if you're like my mom, you just have pay as you go. You don't even know why you have a cell phone. Sometimes you use it, sometimes you don't. Maybe you're more of an irregular situation. Okay, and then finally, how about medication? So this is a trick question because medication could be all of these as well, right? It depends. Do you take medication on a regular basis? Maybe it's monthly fixed. If your medication really depends on the circumstances for the month, then it could be monthly variable. If you only take medication when you're really, really sick and that only happens once or twice a year, that could be irregular. Yeah, so Jackie's got the right idea. Okay, so moving along here. Let's talk about ways to track your expenses. So now we are on page 8 of the workbook. Tracking your expenses is arguably the most important part about budgeting. And that is because where we think we spend money is not always where we are actually spending our money. A lot of people say, well, it's dining out. I just dine out way too much. That's where all my money's going. There was a girl a few workshops ago who said that she spent $1,000 on Skip the Dishes in a month. $1,000. Just let that sink in for a second. But do you know if that's where your money's going? I mean, that was her. Oh, someone said Amazon. Yeah, I mean, it could be Amazon, but do you know for sure? I always thought it was dining out for myself, but it ended up being buying gifts for other people. So let's go back a second. When you're just letting your money sit in a bank account without really categorizing it at all, it's hard to tell how much you have left in a certain category and how much you have already spent in a certain category. So one way to track your expenses is by keeping all your receipts or looking back through all your bank statements. You color code it so by category so that you can see exactly how much you've spent on groceries, how much you've spent on Amazon, how much you've spent on clothing, etc., etc. So then you review your statement or receipt a couple times a month and just tweak as necessary. And it's important to know that budgeting gets better and easier the more you do it. So it does take a little bit of practice. If this is the first time you're doing a budget, be gentle and gracious with yourself. Okay, so if you find receipts or bank statements a little too much work, a lot of people like online trackers. All the big banks have this. This morning, someone told me that either the RBC one or the BMO one was okay. Someone else thought that the TD one was really good. But yeah, all the major banks tend to have these online trackers. It's exactly like the receipt or bank statement method, only it's all online, or sometimes they have an app. Just a word of caution though, if you use one of those third-party apps that then links to your bank account or screen scrapes or pretends to be you or logs in as you in some way, sometimes it can void your agreement with your bank. So whereas before you would have been covered for like fraud and things like that, when you link one of these third-party apps that tracks your expenses to your bank account, that can void and nullify your agreement with the bank to cover you for fraud and things like that. So just be careful. Okay, so then there's the envelope or jar method. This is a method for keeping keeping a limit on your variable monthly expenses. So you would keep an envelope full of cash for things like groceries, clothing, coffees, what have you. So every time you go out for coffee, you take, money from the envelope and you leave your debit card at home. Now, when the envelope is empty, you either have to wait for the next month or you have to take money from a different envelope. So if you're not a cash person, then maybe you would appreciate the gift card variation, which is exactly what it sounds like, right? So now instead of a big envelope full of cash for your coffee, now you've bought a gift card from Starbucks, Tim Hortons, wherever. And again, at the end of, once you've run out of your balance on the gift card, you either have to wait for the next month or you have to reload it with money from somewhere else, right? So that's the gift card variation. And then there's the calendar method, which is really more of a visual thing for people who are good at looking far out. Yeah, and you're still going to color code. You write down your income, expenses, and bill due dates on the calendar. And then you write down what you expect to spend. And after you spend it, then you write down what the actual spend was. So that way you see your pattern of spending and you can see if the budget is working for you. Okay, so here is just a template. This one isn't in your workbook, but this is illustrating why it's important to know the difference between your wants and needs and what is a monthly variable expense. Because remember, monthly variable expenses tend to be where people have the most control over. Okay, so what have we got here? Under the second column, we've got gas bill, Netflix, insurance, Disney Plus, and rent. Which ones were wants? Netflix and Disney. Yep, Daniel's got it. Disney. Exactly. Netflix and Disney Plus. So in the second to last column, the second from the right, they've written, oh, I'm sorry, not the second one from the right. It's the column that says cut, the one that says cut in red. Netflix, they've said, okay, well, that's more of a want than a need. So I'll cut that out, save $35. Disney Plus, we'll cut that out. That's more of a want than a need, save 18. So out of all of these expenses, which one was a monthly variable? Gas bill, Netflix, insurance, Disney Plus, and rent. It was the gas bill, right? Yep, you got it, Daniel. Okay, so they've said, okay, I think there's different ways that I could cut that gas bill. I'll lower it, which is this green column here, by $45. And then in the last column, they calculate how much they've saved, which is a total of $98. Okay, pretty good, pretty good. Lots of things you could buy with $98. All right, so now let's go back to the expenses side of things. Remember how we said savings really belongs on the expenses side? Let's talk about tips to help you save. So firstly, put it in your budget. Think of it as something you have to do monthly, right? So a monthly fixed expense, or maybe it's a monthly variable expense. Either way, think of it as something you need to do every month. Pay yourself first. So that means as soon as you get your paycheck or your government benefit check or whatever source of income, you get put it some into savings first before you start spending on other things. Make it automatic. A lot of the banks will do this for you. You just have to ask how to set it up, and then you can choose the timing, what day of the month you want it, and the amount. And then have a goal. Because when you can visualize what it is you are saving towards, it makes it so much easier to stay motivated, right? Because when you feel tempted to spend, when you feel tempted to stray from that budget, you'll have that visual aid in the back of your mind. Oh, lying on the beach in Mexico, right? Or that really cool thing that I saw on Amazon, or a new car, or whatever it is for you. So that's why it's important to have a goal. So I think on page 10, there is an activity at the bottom. Just because we're short on time today, I will leave that for you folks to do yourself at home later. But it just talks about how you give your goal a name. What do you want to save for? You figure out how much it's going to cost. Then you set a timeline and you work backwards, right? So if my kitchen renovations are going to cost $10,000 and I need them by, in 10 months from now, because that's when my family is going to come and visit, then I need to save $1,000 a month. So that's writing a savings goal. Now let's talk about an emergency fund. What's the difference between an emergency fund and a regular savings fund? Well, emergencies are characterized by these three things. They are unplanned. You need them fixed urgently. And hopefully they're one time only, right? So that could be an emergency vet bill or some sort of medication or a car repair, things like that. I mean, we live in Alberta, right? We have these terrible hailstorms, and sometimes in the spring, the hail will actually break all the windows on your house, right? So that needs to be fixed urgently. Hopefully, it was just a one time, and it was totally unplanned. So that's the difference between the emergency fund and the savings fund, where you actually had a goal in mind. How much should you save in an emergency fund? So really, anything is better than nothing. And they have done studies that show that people who are living on low incomes that have a $500 emergency fund are actually in a better place financially than people who have a medium income and have no emergency fund. Why is that? That's because if you have no emergency fund, if an emergency happens, where are you going to get the money from, right? Either you have to take out a loan at the bank, or if you can't get one that fast, maybe you have bad credit, what have you, you might end up going to a high cost lender, and then you can get stuck in the cycle of debt. If you have the emergency fund, okay, there's no application, there's no waiting period. You don't have to pay any interest. You don't even really have to explain to anyone what you're using the money for. So yeah, that's why it's good to have an emergency fund. So the number we threw out there is 500. But really, once you hit 500, why not keep going? Try to make it 1,000, try to make it 2,000. And in terms of time frames, what the rule of thumb is around 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. That's what you want to have in an emergency fund. But if you look at the bottom of page 11, there's a box that says assess your risk. And these are characteristics where if this applies to you, you may want to consider having even more in your emergency fund. So some examples, if you have children, if you have an old car, if you own a home, if your job is unstable, if you have a medical condition. So we'll just let you folks look at that list later on at home, but that's on page 11, just to help you decide how much to keep in your emergency fund. And saving a small amount over time can make a huge, huge difference, right? So even $20 a month, if you can put that away in a year, you'll have $240, right? And again, if you were feeling fearful about money before and you just weren't saving at all, then you have nothing in your emergency fund. Even just $20 a month to have 240, you're going to be in a better off position than if you had zero. So that's saving. Now let's talk about building your budget. Now that we know about income and expenses and saving, let's talk about building our budget. So how we do that is we add up all our sources of income, right? From our side hustle, from our salaried position, from our government benefits, from gifts we receive through the year, whatever it is. And then we subtract all of our expenses. And what do the expenses include? Debt repayment and savings. We're going to balance our budget to zero. And again, that means that our income minus our expenses equals zero. Okay, so if the income is more than the expenses, then we're going to assign some of those dollars to savings or debt repayment. And if the expenses are more than the income, we either have to increase the income or decrease the expenses in some way. So every month, excuse me, every month we'll review our budget and we'll adjust it as necessary. And again, it takes practice. So be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself. The more you do it, the more you budget, the better you'll become. Okay, so now okay, I think we have time for this actually. We're at 7:45. So we'll go to page 13 in the workbook. And maybe we'll just take 1 minute here. So until like about 7:47 for people to fill out this budget for a month. Right, so in the income side, we got, just for those of us who haven't downloaded the workbook, on the income side of things, we have wages or salary. And then there's a couple boxes for other. Just take a minute to fill out what your monthly income you think might be. And don't worry if you mess up on this sheet, because there's another sheet at the back of the workbook as well. Wages or salary, government benefits, gifts, side hustle, anything like that. And then on the expenses side, we have housing, and under that could be rent, mortgage or condo fees, electricity and gas, water, sewage, recycling, internet, cable, and phone. Got your living expenses, transportation, debt and savings, of course, is on there. We have a few other things on there. And again, everyone's budget is going to be different. So you may want to add in your own categories. And then we've got irregular expenses such as gifts, clothing, and vacation. Okay, I see a question in the chat. When your monthly income is widely variable, do you have any special tips for this type of balancing? That's the artist's life, isn't it? Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so as you can imagine, we have a start your own business department. So we hear this quite a bit. And even though your monthly income is widely variable, you do still have something that is consistent month over month, right? And that's your monthly fixed expenses, your rent and your clothing or monthly fix. Yeah, I'm sorry, your rent and your insurance and your transportation perhaps, right? So you're going to want to account for that first, right? And so that's going to budget, or I'm going to balance a little bit first. And then any leftovers is going to go to where? Because you don't want those dollars sitting around. It's going to go towards savings. So then in the next month, let's say the first month, lots of income. You have a lot left over, that's going to go towards savings. And that is going to potentially get you through the next month, which maybe your income is very low, right? And then what are you going to account for first with those dollars of income? You're going to cover your needs first. Because remember, the budget is going to cover your needs and some wants. Yeah, so it's going to be kind of like a special sort of balancing that you're doing there. And I think maybe you'll need to evaluate your budget a little more often than someone who had like a salaried position would do. Does that help to answer your question? Okay, good. I'm glad. Yeah, and if anyone else on the call today has any other suggestions, because I know, yeah, I'm sure that a lot of people have a very similar circumstance, right? Please feel free to share what your tips are. Okay, so, excuse me, you filled in your budget. You've looked at it to see where does your budget balance. Sorry, I'm just going to cough for 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, so you've seen, does your budget balance? And again, this is probably where you're going to do a lot more checking over your budget and trying to make it balance throughout the month, right? If it does not balance, if your expenses are more than your income, what can you do? Where can you make changes? Does anyone have any ideas? So remember, when your expenses are more than your income, there's really only two broad options for you, right? You can either increase your income in some way, or you can decrease your expenses. And what were some of the ways that we said we could increase our income, right? We could look at government benefits. You could get a side hustle. Maybe you could sell things that you do not need, right? And when you decrease your expenses, how can you do that? Remember that example about getting your entertainment need met and how there were different ways to do it? You could go to the library for free, or you could splurge on a weekend getaway for 500, right? So maybe it's more reevaluating, how do I get this want, or how do I meet this need in a slightly less expensive way? right? Or remember we were talking about the budget busters? Where can we adjust there? Or the monthly variable expenses? Is there some place that we can cut back? That's really the only two places that you can make changes. Okay, so here's a good segue to sticking to your budget, I think. So especially as artists, I can imagine, yeah, you do have a lot of different expenses throughout the month, and maybe your income looks widely different from month to month. So then how do you stick to your budget? Well, if you think that impulse buying might be one of the ways that your expenses are creeping up, there's different ways to deal with that. And impulse buying is where you go to the store and you see something you like so much that you ended up buying it then and there, even though you had no plan to do so. So what we recommend is ask yourself a lot of questions. Do I want or do I need this brand new, beautiful, soft paintbrush? Am I buying this only because it is on sale? Because just because it's on sale doesn't mean it's a good deal, and it doesn't mean that you need or even want it. If I charge this to my credit card, will I be able to pay it off at the end of the month? And tomorrow, will I be happy I bought this? So, other questions? Stop and think, is this good value? Is this the best price? Like when you go to the grocery store, I don't know about you, but everywhere I go, I see people looking down at their phones in the aisles. What do you think they're looking at? I think they're price comparing. So is this the best price? Is there something else I won't be able to buy? How many hours will I have to work to pay for this? How many commissions will you have to do? How many pieces of whatever it is you specialize in will you have to sell in order to pay for these brand new shoes, these new art supplies, right? Okay, listen to yourself, because if you feel nervous or guilty, you may want to wait to make the purchase. Probably by the next day, you'll have a little more clarity over whether or not this is a want or a need. And creating change. If after evaluating your expenses, you don't like what you see, there's different ways that you can change, right? You can change your habits. So a good example of this is if every day on your way to work, you drive, let's say you walk by an art store, or let's say you even walk by the dollar store, right? And you just stop in, maybe just to warm up a little bit, maybe just to look around. But you find that you always walk out with a purchase, then maybe you need to take a different route to work, or on your way home to work, home from work rather. And how about changing your thinking? So let me think of an example that might be specific to artists. Is there a brand of of art supplies that is better than another brand? Like if you go to an art store, like there's one in Sunnyside here, right? Are the paintbrushes that I buy at the Sunnyside art supply store, are they going to be better than the paintbrushes that I buy at the dollar store? Please let me know, artists. Or even the paint that I buy at that Sunnyside art supply store, are they going to be better than the paints that I buy at the dollar store? Okay, Marianne says yes. Does anyone agree with Marianne? I've heard this, says Daniel. Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I mean, maybe it's pretty obvious to you, folks, because you're professionals, you know this. Um, but is a slightly cheaper brand of paint maybe acceptable for what you're doing? I don't know, maybe it's not. Okay. Yeah, Suzanne said it makes a difference. Nelly said, yeah. So, okay. All right. So maybe it's not paint then. What about batteries? If you're a professional, says Suzanne. Okay, yeah. Um, Amazon has Amazon Basics now, right? So that's their own brand of batteries. Are Amazon Basics as good as like Duracell? Yeah, maybe maybe they're the same. And if you don't think that they're quite the same, maybe there's a different way that you can change your thinking um, just to save money. Or what about secondhand clothes? Close enough, says Marianne. Close enough, right? Or maybe, yeah, maybe buying secondhand clothes is close enough. And you can get your want and your need met and spend a little less. Rechargeables. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. So maybe rechargeables. Okay, and then I see that Kaylee's saying that Calgary has great secondhand clothes stores. Yeah, we do. Okay, and then the other method that we recommend is a step down method. Because let's say you're spending $400 a month on eating out 5 times per week, $20 each time, it's $100 per week. That ends up being $400 a month that someone would spend on eating out. Now, if you said to that person, oh, eating out, that's blowing your budget, you should just cut that straight out. Go to zero by next month. Okay, don't eat out anymore. How successful do you think they'll be? Um, Zero is done. Yeah. Some people can do it, but I think a lot of people, myself included, would find that really hard, unhappily unsuccessful. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. So yeah, with the step down method, what we're saying is that baby steps are usually easier to make towards enacting a change than just cutting something out cold turkey. So in this example, instead of eating out 5 times per week, the next month they will only eat out 4 times per week. They end up saving $80 a month. And then in month 3, they only eat out 3 times per week and they end up saving $160 per month. So that's the step down method. And it's important to realize that you can also step up to start saving money regularly. And we said this before, but small amounts really do add up over time. Okay, so moving forward, maybe before we get into that, I am just going to paste the link to our survey in the chat because I do not want to forget that, which I often do during these workshops. Oops, that's not the correct link. Is that why it didn't work the first time? Okay, let me see. We'll go back to our budgeting PowerPoint. Now let me paste this in the chat. Okay, so I've just pasted the link to our survey in the chat, folks. When we do have our quick break just before, or do we have time for a quick break still, Kaylee? I hope so. Yeah, but please do take a minute to fill out our survey at the end of this workshop. But moving forward,
Hi, Liz.
hi,
Hi. Yes, we still
thank you.
have time for a quick break. It's fine.
Oh, you're lovely. Thank you so much for being so flexible.
No problem.
Okay, so maybe over the break, we'll also take a minute just to think, moving forward to now that we know so much about budgeting and we're all budgeting pros, what will we do less of to manage our money better and what will we do more of? And that's our presentation on budgeting today. Thank you again very much for everyone's participation and yeah, you've been great. Oh, you're on mute, Kaylee.
Okay. Thank you so much, Liz. That was really informative, and the workbook, I think, really helps to have something to look at for all of us to fill in. And it's a process. This is a process over time that we get used to tracking our money, but we really appreciate it, of course. And not a lot of us are taught this in school. We just have to sort of learn it through life if we weren't taught at home. So let's take a 5-minute break, everybody. When we come back, we will be opening up the Q&A for Liz to answer any questions you have. So let's resume at 8:05. Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylee. Oh, I see there's a question about the registration link, and yes, I will put that back in the chat.
How was your swim then?
It was okay.
Liz, for those that join late, you might want to explain what that link's for.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for reminding me. Okay, so everyone, I just put the link to the registration in the chat. What that registration form is for, thanks for reminding me, is Momentum will strip out your name and your identifying information. We aggregate all that data and we share it with our funders. So that just helps to ensure that these workshops can continue to be funded and that they're free for everyone to enjoy. And also, if you're going to go for a certificate of completion later on, then we will need your registration through this link to prove that you attended this workshop. So these certificates of completion we issue when people complete all 5 of our core topics. So today was budgeting. We also have credit, banking, consumerism, and assets as our core workshop topics. Again, you can do those online via pre-recorded video at courses.momentum.org. You can join us for an online facilitated session like tonight. Momentum hold those on Monday nights. Or you can join us at our office in person. We hold those on Tuesday afternoons. And people have used this certificate of completion for everything from applications for rental apartments. It can look good to know that you have, education in money management, because then, you're more likely to be able to be a reliable renter. People have used those on resumes. Can look good to say that you have a certificate of completion for money management if you're applying for a job in financial services. And if you receive income support, sometimes your caseworker will ask for it. So that's what the certificates of completion are about. Okay, I see Lee is asking, I think you may have already answered this, but my Wi-Fi cut out. Any tips for artists whose income changes drastically each month? Yeah, so that's a great question. And what we were discussing is, so I can imagine as an artist, you have income that comes in waves, right? So it's changing every month, but the one thing that does not change is your monthly fixed expenses, right? You need to pay the rent every month. You probably need to have a transit pass if you are getting the transit pass, right? So there's certain things that you definitely still need to pay for. And then when you're getting in your income, you're going to cover those needs first, right? So that was why it was important to know the difference between your needs and your wants. Now, the other thing to think about when your income is changing so greatly every month is when you have a month that is good for income, you're going to probably find that when you try to balance your budget, the income greatly exceeds the expenses. And again, you don't want any of those dollars to be sitting idle. So what do? That extra income, for artists especially, you should probably put that into savings, right? And maybe for you, it's like a special kind of savings where it's like saving for months where my income isn't as high. And then, so then when you do have those months where your income isn't as high, you have that savings put aside as a buffer to kind of, you will like make your own income more steady. Does that make sense? Let me know if that answered your question, Lee. And let me know if I'm saying your name correctly. Is it Lee or Lee? Okay. Oh, good, good. Okay.
Okay, everybody, it's 8:05. And so if you have questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat and we will go from there.
Great
Oh,
questions by everyone today, by the way.
I have a question, Liz. It's
Yes.
actually 2 questions. two of the things that I find we get questions about through ears for resources is people have a really hard time with the discipline and a hard time with mindset when it comes to money and budgeting. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I mean, for the discipline side of things, this is where tracking your expenses and knowing your budget busters and understanding your feelings towards money are going to be so important, right? Because again, the example that we give is that a lot of people say that their money goes towards eating out. But then when we did that exercise where we talked about what would you spend $100 on, I don't think anyone said eating out. Most people said art supplies, right? So you really want to know where your money is going. So certainly like take another look at the methods that we've suggested for tracking your expenses and understand where your money is going first, right? Once you know, then you can start to think about, well, I don't like what I'm seeing in this area. And maybe it's not art supplies. Maybe you are buying toys for your neighbor's child. Maybe you are getting, I don't know, too many, maybe you are eating out. Maybe that's your thing that you don't like. If that's the case, well then, it's in you to make the change. And what are some ideas to make that change? You can change your mindset. You can find different ways to get that need or want met for different price points. Artists are creative people. So I can imagine that you can find a creative solution for that sort of thing. So that hopefully addresses your question about sticking to the budget. And then what was the other part of your question again? Sorry, Kaylee.
Mindset. Like, so someone said to me recently, they're so tired of going without food to try to make up their cost of living issue that they decided just to buy food so they didn't feel like they were going without so much. And now they're
Oh
short
gosh.
on bills.
Oh gosh, yeah. And it's such a tough time right now because inflation is like at a record high. And so in this example, this one is actually more of a dire example because in this case, it's not like you're overspending or impulse spending potentially. It sounds like the real toss up here is between food and rent, and those are both needs, right? So I would say, remember when we talked about 211? Well, actually, we didn't have a lot of time to talk about it, but let me just share my screen really quick again. Oops. Okay, share screen. Share, yes. Okay, so 211 again is like Alberta's directory for community resources, right? And if you are at the point where you have to make a choice between food and rent, I would recommend giving them a call or visiting their website online here. And you can find everything from like financial supports, like emergency financial supports, to yeah, food and basic needs, right? Because food is a basic need. And I'm sorry to hear about this person's situation. Like you should never have to choose between those two things. But I understand like sometimes life circumstances happen and you can't pay the bills, you get a divorce, you are diagnosed with an illness, or you have you lose your job. So yeah. So I'm sorry to hear about that. I don't know if that's quite a mindset thing. But yeah, if you're interested in changing your mindset, again, it goes back to really understanding, first of all, how do you feel about money? And then how does that affect your spending habits? But in this person's particular case, unfortunately, yeah, it just sounds like they don't have enough to cover their basic needs. And I'm sorry to hear that. Also, if you Google Calgary free food resources, you can find like little food libraries sometimes in your area and different organizations that might be able to help you out. I'm sorry to hear about that. Okay, I'm seeing something in the chat here. Can you chat a bit more about educational information or courses that Momentum offers, small business course? Yes, I will certainly chat about that. Am I still sharing my screen? Yes. Okay. So if you go on momentum.org, then yeah, we have different programs for starting your own business, right? And they range anywhere from, well, I have a basic idea, but I don't know where to go from there, to people who have been running their business for a while, but they really need someone to look over their business plan, to tell them, well, maybe these are some areas where you could make improvements. Yeah, and these small business courses can teach you everything from marketing to cash flow statements to like everything in between. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in these courses because this is a different department, but I encourage you, if you're interested in starting your own business, go on momentum.org. And again, it's this orange button right here, start a business. And I'm sure that you can find something that might suit your interests. Okay, someone's saying, for saving, how many savings accounts can you get from bank? For example, can I get a bank to arrange an extra saving account for me to put my income tax and GST savings in there in prep for tax? Such a good and timely question. I'm so glad you asked that. So typically, yeah, like a savings account depends on the bank, and there might be a small fee for the savings account. And if you go over your designated number of transactions. But aside from that, like the separate savings account, usually there isn't a fee for that. And if anyone has experienced something different, please let us know in the chat. But from what I understand, once you have the one savings account, to get additional ones added on top of that for like a separate savings goal is no problem. And why I say that's so timely that you bring that up is because through Momentum's tax filing clinics this year, we're also offering a new program called Tax Time Savings. So if you if you get a refund of over $200 and you agree to save that money until, I think it's until next year, then Momentum will match that savings. I think it's on a 2-to-1 basis, but what's special about this savings program is that you get the match, but you don't have to attend any educational courses. So if you're interested in that, maybe shoot me an email. My email is beside my name in the video here, but I'll also write my email in the chat, and I'll have my colleagues send you more information. Okay, someone's saying, any insight on investing, like safe ways or places to get started? Is it worth it? At what point is it worth it to start thinking about? Any momentum courses to look for? Honestly, anything. Okay, yeah, let me just type my email in the chat first. So investing is a very broad topic. There is lots to know there. Unfortunately, not enough time to cover it today. So what I will say is this: there's something called FCAC. I'll write this in the chat. Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. So this is a federal government body. And if you Google this, you will find information on every money topic imaginable, including investing. So that's the one thing I want to say about investing. The second thing I want to say about it is that there's no like super safe way to invest unless you're going to do, this isn't even investing. I mean, if you put money into a savings account at the bank, you're going to make very low interest, but you're going to make something at least. And it's safe in that you're not going to lose your principal, like the amount that you put in there, although it's not really investing, you're just putting in a savings account, right? But even when you start to look at guaranteed investment certificates, I mean, you're not going to lose your principal again, but it has a little bit of risk because you could be locking in for a certain amount of time, right? And with most investing, what people think of as investing, you have the potential to earn, but you also have the potential to lose it all. So ask a ton of questions, Make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Do a ton of research, think about it for a long time. So I guess there's 3 main takeaways here. Ask a lot of questions, know what you're getting into. Takeaway number 2 is know that with investing, yeah, you can make money, but you could also lose it all. So nothing out there is really completely safe. And then 3, I would encourage you to look at the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. Just do a quick Google search, FCAC investing. You'll find a lot of information there. That being said, investing is one of the topics that Momentum covers as an elective if you choose to take a longer match savings program. We don't really offer it as part of these money management workshops. And then maybe we'll just take one last question, TFSA versus a regular savings account. Okay, so tax-free savings, I think you meant, yeah, TFSA. So a tax-free savings account is known as a registered account, right? So all of these registered accounts, TFSA included, have different tax breaks to them, tax advantages, I guess you would say. The main advantage, TFSA versus regular savings account, is if you earn interest, typically in a regular savings account, that would be considered income, right? So what does the government like to tax? Income. But on a tax-free savings account, any earnings that you make, interest on those savings, will not be counted as income. That's why you wouldn't receive, like, I don't think you receive a tax slip for that. So that's the main difference there. So I apologize, folks, we are out of time. I've put my email into the chat there, lizw@momentum.org. It's also beside my name. You're welcome. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. Do email me if anyone has any other questions, or if you want Momentum to come back and present on a different topic. Again, we do banking, budgets, credit, consumerism, and assets. So yeah, those are our core courses that we can do for a certificate of completion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Liz. And just a reminder to everyone, you will be receiving a form from EAR in the email to fill out about tonight's presentation. We really appreciate this presentation from Momentum. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay, it's just us.
Okay. That was good. How many people came? About 18?
No, there was about 19 in total.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's good for personal finances.
Yeah, actually, and the people that were here seemed to be pretty engaged.
She was great. Her talk was really good and engaging.